it's not like definitive, but these are just some things that we're personally invested in just because of our kids. Our kids are 10, almost 11, 8 and 6. So because we see what's happening out there with our kids, we really took it upon ourselves to get educated. And so this is just, we're just sharing with you guys what we have learned and what we're continuing to learn, okay? All right.
And so we just want to start off with Proverbs 22:6. So, train up the child in the way that she should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. If you guys can attest with all of us have a social media problem. All of us have a phone problem. Like me and Christina, we were talking this morning about the presentation. We're like, we feel like such hypocrites, right? Not with the child part, but with our parts, right? We also have a phone problem that we all need to deal with. And if we train up our children young to deal with this phone and AI problem, phone, social media problem, AI in the future, we also know, then when they're older, maybe this won't be a bigger problem for them, okay? So the idea is we start them young, and it's going to, God willing, help them in the future. So a lot of the stuff we're going to be presenting today is from a book called The Anxious Generation. Did anyone ever read The Anxious Generation? Anybody? Good, great. It's awesome. So if I highly recommend it, for those of you that have not read it, it's something to really do. In the last chapter of the book, he describes this experiment, and it was done in 1968. Okay? And what he did is he brought in students into a lab, and he told them that they were going to be part of a discussion, they were waiting for something. Okay? So the real experiment, what they did is they waited in the waiting room, and as the students filled out some preliminary questionnaire, this strange vapor or mist began to pour through a vent in the room. Okay? And the experiment was they were looking at the students to see what were the students going to do. Okay, what are the students going to do when this vapor is going into the room? Would they get up? Would they go talk to someone? Would they help people out of the room? What would they do? What were they going to do? So in that condition, 75% took action. Half of the subjects left the room to find the experimenter within 2 minutes of smoking, of noticing the smoke. Okay? And then in a separate room, they had some people who were part of the experiment. And what they did was they sat down and they didn't move. Okay? So it was like people who were part of this role. They sat down and they didn't move. Okay? When they had a few people who didn't move, what happened was no one moved. Okay? So no one used their common sense when no one was acting. Okay? So it's like a bystander effect. Okay? It's something that's talked about a lot. So what's that mean to us? It means to us that if we have inaction in this particular topic or any topic, everyone is going to follow our inaction. Okay? So we need to be the beginning of the change. Okay? And if we are the beginning of the change, then people are going to follow. Okay? And this happens in everything. Okay? But we should really be the beginning of change in things that are important.
So just to relate it to our talk today, so essentially the smoke that's coming into the room is the phones, the social media, the AI, everything is seeping in, and we...
The book called it?
Yeah.
The book called it The Diffusion of Digital Technology. Yeah. Like smoke, the diffusion of digital technology.
So what we want today is just to create, awareness. We start asking questions, we start having conversations, and I'm told that everybody here has young kids or is, married 0 to 10, yes? So this is a good time for us to have these conversations about what our outlook is going to be like when our kids get older, right? So they are living, this is Generation Alpha and Beta, I guess. So they're living in the age of social media and technology and now AI. So this has become part of their life. The smoke has already entered the room. What we're encouraging everyone here is to start asking questions, and to start saying, what is the smoke and what are we going to do about it? Okay?
Again, just a disclaimer, this is not to make anyone feel bad. Okay? So I'll give you an example. So Joshua is our first child, right? Joshua was our test dummy kid, right? No parent knows what they're doing. With Joshi, at the beginning, he wouldn't eat anything, nothing. And we were like, oh, let's get Peppa Pig and put it in front of him when he's eating to make him eat. Terrible mistake, right? And thank God we didn't continue to do that for a while. But the idea is, we didn't know what we were doing, right? And so don't feel bad about what you've done, because there's nothing to feel bad about. It's all about knowledge. Same thing with like smoking, right? You think like back in the day when people didn't know the ill effect of cigarettes, a surgeon would be doing a surgery and smoking at the same time. He'd walk out of the operating room smoking, right? But now that they know smoking is bad for people, they don't allow it in whatever hospital premises or any premises. That's what all these things. Okay, so same idea. It's not to make anyone feel bad.
Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to stats from the Anxious Generation. And again, the Anxious Generation is a really good book. It's a really good read. So at the beginning, it kind of summarizes the data of what's happening on the ground right now. And then the later part of it is like action items, like what can you actually do? Okay, so this one over here is so first of all, the data suggests that before the early 2010s, social media or mental health was normal. Okay, so what happened in the early 2000s and the 2010s is that the phone started having a front camera, okay, and social media is now app-based rather than it being web-based. So that was the difference in the trajectory of what happened. Like I remember in 2006, I couldn't get Facebook because I didn't have a university email to log in, right? So that was the threshold of social media. But right now, everybody has social media. Kids, as young as 8 have social media, and that's the change. So this is what they are basing the data off of. So the first thing that I want to mention is major depression among teens. So as you see here, in 2004 up until 2010, 2012, that's when you started seeing an increase. So among girls, it's 145% increase, and for boys, it's 161% increase. Right? So you usually think that it impacts girls more than boys, but now we're seeing a trend that boys are actually more heavily impacted than girls.
Than girls or than themselves?
Sorry?
It looks like the boys are still less than the girls.
The rate of the trajectory. So the rate of increase now for boys is 161% increase.
Compared to themselves.
Compared to themselves. And girls is 140% increase, but compared to themselves. But the degree of increase is higher in boys than it is higher in girls. The slope.
Right. And yet it seems like the gap between the girls and the boys is higher than what it was before.
Yes, so at baseline, the girls are higher, right? And now it's continuing to increase. But the noticeable trend that people are like starting to be aware of is boys' mental health, right?
So
if this continues, when they're looking at like recent data, boys' depression is going up higher. Girls are like flat.
So they project it could be that the boys will be more?
No, I don't think that the boys will be more, but again, that their rate of increase
The rate
is
of
high.
increase is high.
Yeah.
So this is the graph for mental illness among college students. So anxiety has been shown to increase 134%, depression 106%, ADHD is 72%, and then we have bipolar, anorexia, substance abuse or addiction, and schizophrenia, right? So all of this is on the rise. This is the suicide rate. So among boys, it's a 91% increase since 2010, and for girls, it's 161% increase since 2010. So this is another notable difference in that, when girls attempt suicide, it's not successful. When boys attempt suicide, it's very successful, right? Like they have the means towards doing it. Similar to the graph before, the girls' increase is it's a lot more, right? And boys obviously has increased as well. This one is satisfied with oneself, so the rate of satisfaction. Girls is definitely on a downward trend, and boys is on a downward trend. This one I find very interesting. So as you see here, many more grade 12s are choosing not to get their driver's license. They're not working, they're not having sex, and have never tried alcohol. So usually these activities are considered to be adult activities or adult-like things that they do. But right now we're seeing a trend in that they're not exploring adult things. So the thing with sex is that, yeah, sure, like they're not having premarital sex, which is something good, but that is also indicative in that they're not interested in having relationships with the other gender, right? They're not having these romantic feelings and acting on them. So what it means is that they're not putting themselves out there. They're not putting themselves in a position to get rejected. They're not putting themselves in a position to, be disappointed. So they have a very low frustration tolerance. And this is very indicative to how they will be doing in adulthood, right? So in adulthood, as we all know, there's lots of frustration and lots of disappointment, but we know how to navigate that. But the younger generation, because they haven't developed that muscle of frustration, that they don't know how to navigate adult things when they're there.
The instructor.
Okay, yeah. So the last thing I want to say is that I was in a course, and the instructor was sharing her 19-year-old girl in university. According to her, she's super cute, she's super bubbly, she wants to have a boyfriend, she's ready, she's at that age where she gets to do it. But no one, she's not finding anyone to be equally interested in her as she is in other people. And no one is socializing in real life. So the dating trend right now is to go online, where, again, it's not putting yourself out there, the risk of rejection is much lower, it's not in real life. So again, frustration tolerance is very low. So this is just showing the danger of kids not exposing themselves to pressure and rejection in the little things. So who cares if you fail a driver's license more than once? No big deal, try it again. But kids are not wanting to put themselves in that position of rejection, which makes them harder not to withstand the pressure of rejection in bigger things. So like college applications, getting a job, and all the things that we go through. That's a natural thing in life, right? So it's frustration tolerance.
I'm sure all of you guys, whoever is part of the university service, do you guys talk to your university kids about how many days a week they go on campus? I went to NAC for undergrad. I loved going to NAC. Loved. Okay? It was social, we all hang out all the time. Kids nowadays, they have so many online-only classes. Or they have an option to not even show up to class because it's going to be online and they can listen to it later. Right? I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, how many days a week is at York University, he's studying kinesiology. How many days a week do you go on campus? One. One is the answer. He goes to campus 1 day a week. So again, there's a lack of socialization because of everything now being online. Alright, I hope it's gonna work. Let's see, that's it. Okay. It's okay. We'll just talk about it. Alright, I don't know, do you guys, this is supposed to be a video that's going to happen from the movie Inside Out. I don't know if anyone saw Inside Out. Okay. Inside Out 2. So in the first movie, they give what emotional regulation can be. I think joy, anger, sadness, fear. But in the second movie, they introduce about what we go through when we go through puberty, right? What emotions do we have when we go through puberty? And I think the ones that they talked about, here it is. Anyway, so psychologically, everything happens in the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe, when you're going through puberty, is not developed. And that frontal lobe is kind of like executive function, like how you make decisions in life. Okay? And the transition happens from adulthood, from childhood to adulthood, is this frontal lobe is being rewired. And as the brain is getting ready to become socially and psychologically mature, that's when puberty is. So puberty, if you watch this movie, it shows how the teenager's developing her identity and the situations that she has to deal with. So in our kids' case, if we introduce social media to them so early, that social media is going to really affect how their brain is developing, okay? And it's going to really change what they view as normal and not normal. So the critical time for us to intervene in our children is puberty, because that's when, again, they're being developed.
So in this movie, it's a really good scene because the brain is super calm, super quiet, everything's normal, wiring is done properly. And then when puberty hits, the way that they depict it is construction workers with bulldozers, and they completely wreck the brain, right? So the headquarters is completely demolished, there's bulldozers and everything. So this is what the sign of puberty is that it's a complete demolishing of what's already there, and puberty kind of takes over, and now it's restructuring. So this is a critical point in that a lot of kids right now are having social media at this point where everything is being restructured. And when we introduce social media, the identity that's being developed now after that like leveling off of what's in the brain, social media and the phone and the pressures become part of that identity. So this is why puberty is such a critical age. Okay? Yes?
Are we equating social media with the use of technology in general? So like in the example you gave, you said, like social media and the use of the phone. I guess I'm just trying to
So
figure
later
out.
on we'll discuss like what's appropriate in terms of technology
Okay.
slash phone
Yes,
slash social media for what age.
For age groups, yeah, we'll break it down.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay.
Because yeah, you're right. Like our kid, like Joshua's in grade 5, right?
Yeah.
And he has Google Classroom. Everything in the world is on Google Classroom, right? So he has to be. No, we're not saying he can't be in the online world because he has to be. In his presentations, he has to make Google slide presentations, etc. That's his work. So yeah, we have to be. We're in the world. We have to be in the world, but we have to have some control to mitigate risk.
So also, we forgot to mention, the premise of this book essentially summarized in, currently, we are over-parenting in the real world and under-parenting in the online world. And what we want to do is flip that narrative. We want to under-parent in the real world, give them opportunities to grow in the real world, but over-parent in the online world, whatever that online world is. Okay? Yes? Okay.
I'm saying like in the real world, like how many times as kids I took my bike from like Mississauga to Eglinton and I would like bike to square one. You know what I mean? But how many kids do you see doing that nowadays? I played street hockey to no end. I built a tree house in a forest behind our house. How many kids do that now? Not a lot. And part of it is to do with us parents being afraid to let them do things.
So, yes?
How do you get over that? I'd love to get over that.
Yeah.
And
So-
let them go out, and how do you encourage it?
Right, so we'll talk about that in the breakdown. So we have some ideas for each age group as to how to get them more in the real world and less in the online world. So the issue with and I'm jumping the gun, is that we fear the physical injury, right? We feel it that like they're gonna scrape their knee, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that. But the bigger fear that we should have is the invisible injury, the mental health, the things that go inside, invisible, without them processing outside. Okay? Yes.
I get what you're talking about in terms of the online world. I'm just not sure about the overprotection in the real world. Maybe no one is building like a tree house in the forest, but I think that would have been even the odd thing at your time. Not a lot of people build a tree house in the forest.
I mean, but a lot of people played outside.
Yeah, a lot of people played outside, but a lot of parents. But this is only a feeling. I don't know if there has been a research, but a lot of parents, they put their kids into soccer, they put their kids into gymnastics, they do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Isn't that the outside world?
So
So it is, and you're completely correct, and we do that almost to mitigate the fact that there's not enough kids outdoors, like playing. So like when I was a kid, my parents didn't put me in any of these things because if I go out on the street, there's 15 kids and we can have our own games, right? And we didn't have to be inside. And what's happening nowadays is that the parents are putting all their children in all of these activities because there's nothing happening that the kids can join, right? Like the kids there's no one playing outside as much. So yes. But even when you're putting them in these like rep activities and all of these activities, you're hovering over them, right? You're seeing like what are they doing? They're interfering in every altercation that they can get into. Like you are over-parenting them. You have to give them like space to live. I'll give you another example. So again, we have 3 boys. Christina and I decided last week that we wanted to go get something to drop off at FedEx. Like nothing. We had a package of
5-minute walk.
Yeah, 5-minute walk. Okay? So we left the boys, they were playing, and we went to FedEx to walk. Okay? While I was there, I met like someone that I knew, like a colleague. Okay? Someone that I knew. She's like, "Where are the boys?" I'm like, "Oh, they're just playing. We're 5 minutes away." Like we left. Like if they need us, they'll come get us. They know where we are. It's gonna take a second. And it was like, oh God, children's aid is gonna get called. You know what I mean? So as a 10-year-old, when I was a 10-year-old, my parents gave me a key to our apartment back then, right? And nowadays it's very different.
I used to go on the streetcar when I was 10,
Yeah.
right? And younger than 10. But yeah, I
So,
see
but
what
we
you're
have to
saying.
encourage our kids to do that, right? I encourage my 10-year-old to go bike to the park, so that he can play. And I think some of it isn't that the world is less safe, but it is that we know more of what's happening in the world, right? We know more of like the kidnapping, we know more of this, and we know more, so we're just more scared. But like nothing should be done out of fear.
So, another thing about this book is that this is written by an atheist psychologist, right? But he dedicated a whole chapter in the book to talk about the God-shaped hole that everybody has. So think about it for a minute. An atheist talking about a God-shaped hole that all humanity has. And I think that's, it's really big for someone of his level of education and what he believes to dedicate a whole chapter on spirituality, that we are spiritual beings, right? So the quote that I want to share from this book, first of all, St. Irenaeus says, "The glory of God is man fully alive." And fully alive means in the real world. He wasn't speaking about an invisible realm, right? It was online, in real person. So the quote from the book that says, "Many of my religious friends disagree about the origin of our God-shaped hole. They believe that the hole is there because we are God's creation and long for our Creator. But although we disagree about its origins, we agree about its implications. There is a hole, an emptiness in us all, that we strive to fill. If it doesn't get filled with something noble and elevated, modern society will quickly pump it full of garbage. That has been true since the beginning of age of mass media, but the garbage pump got 100 times more powerful in the 2010s. In a phone-based life, we are exposed to an extraordinary amount of content. Much of it is chosen by algorithms pushed to us by notifications that interrupt whatever we are doing. It's too much. A lot of it pulls us downward. We need to take back control of our inputs and our lives." Right? So he's highlighting the fact that we have a hole that can only be filled by God. But what we're doing right now is that we're filling this hole that's specifically shaped for something specific by all the stuff that's around us. And before, we used to fill it by people or hobbies or like things around us. But now that like the online world is part of our life, we're filling it with like 100 times more than we have capacity for, right? So.
All right. So I just want to talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about. So we usually when we've done this talk or a similar talk before, we had like a young adult named John who's in university, grad school. Yeah, he's a physiotherapist. He finished kinesiology now. Physio. He would come on and he would talk a little bit about how him and his group of like 6 friends, we call them the flip phone boys at church, decided to leave their phone and become only have flip phones. Okay? And the reason that they did this is spiritual implications and the physical implications that we talked about. Okay? So I'll talk a bit about the spiritual implications of social media. So social media is how social media and all these likes, you get like a dopamine reward to your brain, right? And that dopamine reward makes you feel good. That same dopamine surge is what you get when you, have like with drug use. It's the same kind of like dopamine, like substance abuse. It's the same kind of like dopamine effect that you get. So your brain really wants more. Your brain really wants more. Your brain really wants more. So when you're on social media and you do a like, or everybody likes me, you get this dopamine surge, so you want to do it more. Okay? And so that's the first thing. So it gives us an inability to have stillness because we're always looking for like the next surge, the next like, the next this, the next that. So the brain now looks more for dopamine surges and it affects its ability to maintain attention and to be still. So be still and know that I'm God. So that's the first thing. Second thing is this is doom scrolling. I know we all find ourselves doing it. One of the best things when I've been a priest, it'll be a year coming up next month. But when we were sitting with Ambabulis, he's like, listen Aruna, or listen Tamer for Aruna, I want you to get rid of all social media and I did. I don't know if you guys have never seen me online. I don't have anything. I want you to get rid of social media, and the reason is you're going to give yourself so much more time. Okay, and your brain is going to have ability to have God speak to you more, because you're going to you're going to be present in every moment, and you're going to be able to hear God better. I'm not telling you all to get rid of social media. I'm not telling you all to get rid of this stuff, but it was one of the best things that I did. And one of the reasons is I never had like a lot of social media, but I had Facebook. And Facebook, I would find myself scrolling endlessly about nothing, right? I didn't learn anything, some silly videos, whatever. It was about nothing. This is doom scrolling. So doom scrolling leads to the brain inability to be present in the moment. So the verse from Ephesians 5:15-16, it says, "See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil." Okay? So the brain becomes robbed. The second thing is this echo chamber effect. So you guys see it all the time. Your phones or whatever social media that you're in always gives you validation for the thing that you want to hear about or to read about or whatever it is. It is constantly validating you. AI is the same thing. You could put the silliest, I want to do this, and say, oh, great job, you're doing this. Yeah. So it gives you this incredible amount of validation. So the echo chamber effect is the algorithm makes it so that users consume content and confirms their biases. So they're not confronted by anything that is anti what their thoughts are. Okay? And it says, so first from Romans, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing your mind, and may prove what is good and acceptable, perfect will of God. So if your only voice is yourself, and you're constantly validating yourself, that's not going to lead to any growth. So the echo chamber effect. And the last thing is that social media really makes it so that we don't have depth of relationship. And you'll see it with the younger kids. They really unfriend people quickly the same way that they unfriend people online. Okay? So it happens all the time with the youth. So they have trouble having real relationship. There's a quote from Pope Teledros that says, "Idolatry, the time and attention demanded by social media, can turn into an idol that takes priority over one's relationship with the divine."
The real experience was different.
Yeah, so the real experience, so the flip phone experience. So again, like John and a bunch of his friends, they were given the smartphone in junior high. This is very brief and very general, he goes into specifics. But very briefly, they were all given the smartphone in junior high. And then their parents were like, this is not, the people that they're becoming in high school is not good. Their grades have been going down, their relationships, they're isolating, all of that kind of stuff. They're angrier, all of these different things. Parents decided to remove smartphones in grade 9 and 10. So they were the extremely uncool people in their class. And they went to school with that flip phone, and they had to use it in front of their peers, and they said it was the worst experience at the time. And now that they are in university and grad school, they said that this was the best thing that ever happened to them.
They chose to go back.
And so their parents gave it to them in grade 12, and they actively told them, we don't want a smartphone, we want to continue on with the flip phone. So they did undergrad with the flip phone, and now they're slowly getting back into the smartphone world. But they have put extreme safeguards on their smartphone, so now that they only function the phone as a phone. They only call, they text very rarely, they don't have any apps, it's like grayscale, it's like the most boring thing ever. But they said that because of this, they are more attuned to the world around them, their friendships are deeper, their level of concentration at school has increased. And also they said that this has spiritual implications specifically in the liturgy. So if you look at the liturgy structure, it is meant to be an in-life experience, a real experience. But if you're constantly pulled to the online world, the real life becomes extremely boring, right? And the attention span was decreased and all of that kind of stuff. So they said that when they removed the smartphone from their life, they actually attended liturgy for the first time again, right? So all of these things were kind of unlocked and opened for them. Okay, so this is quite contentious, but right now social media is in the courts, okay? There have been numerous trials that are taking place in the States and Canada as well against social media, specifically Snapchat, TikTok, Meta, Instagram, all of it. And here in Ontario, a bunch of school boards are actually taking these companies to court, okay? because of the impact of children's mental health and their level of education. So many times social media actually settle, so people don't actually know what's happening behind the scenes. But there's this one case that was actually taken to court where this girl, Kaylee, she took TikTok, Snapchat, Meta, and YouTube. TikTok and Snap, they settled. The only people who were willing to go to court against this trial was Meta and YouTube. They went to the courts, okay? So Kaylee started using YouTube at 6 years old, Instagram at 9, and she spent her whole day online. She developed severe anxiety, depression, and engaged in self-harm. So her legal team attributed directly to the app's use. So how much time and to the app's use.
And how the app manipulates.
And how the app manipulates the design behind it. It's not like what you see. The design behind it features like infinite scrolling and autoplay and all that kind of stuff. So in March 2026, a Los Angeles jury found both Meta and YouTube, which is Google, liable for negligence and failing to provide reasonable warnings, awarding Kaylee $6 million in damages, whatever. Okay? So what I want to highlight is there are 6 questions that the jury had to answer without reasonable doubt that it was the design of Meta and YouTube. So I just want to go through the questions because I want to highlight the level of detail and the level of depth that this jury went into, okay? Was Meta negligent in the design or operation of Instagram? And the jury unanimously voted yes. So this is not the content, this is the design, this is behind, okay? Was this negligence a substantial factor in causing harm to Kaylee? Yes. Did Meta know that the design or operation of Instagram was dangerous when used by a minor? Yes. Did Meta know that the users would not realize this danger? Yes. Did Meta fail to adequately warn of the danger? Yes. Would a reasonable platform, designer, or operator have warned of a danger or instructed on safe use? Yes. Was Meta's failure to warn a substantial factor in causing harm to Kaylee? Yes. So this is not about putting filters on the outside or parental controls on the outside. That is not enough. What we're seeing here is the design behind all of these different things. This is what we're seeing now. So it's not that it's the parents' failure of oversight and parental control and filters and all of these things from the outside. This is intentional behind the design of all of these different things. So no matter what we all do on the outside, the intention behind it is to create addicts, is to create people who spend all this time online. And the danger is seen after that, okay? So next, now governments are taking note. So after that trial, now governments around the world are taking notes of the implication of technology and social media use on our kids. So countries that have passed or have implemented or passed bans. So the bans are usually no social media for 16-year-old and under. Now this is not to say that we are, supporting a specific policy or whatever it is. All this is to say is that now governments have noticed that it is not the failure on the parents' part. This is a failure on the design of these platforms, okay? So the countries that have banned all of this is Australia, Indonesia, UK, France, UAE, and Brazil. And countries with proposed legislation or bans, number 1 is Canada. So right now it's actually going through legislation to say kids under 16 are banned from using all of these platforms.
Literally, this bill was introduced June 10th, 2026, 10 days ago. Yeah. So if you guys, it's all over the news, right? June 10th, 2026, called Bill C-34. So it's a Social Media Act proposing significant legislation for social media platforms. It's about AI chat boxes. It's about online safety. Okay? It's gonna get passed sooner or later. Okay?
How would we enforce that?
Yeah.
So there are different ways of, first of all, kids are smart. Okay? Any child who wants to break something, they're gonna get through. Okay? So it's not like these legislations are gonna be perfect. Some of the countries you have to upload your driver's license or some kind of government ID that has an age. I don't know what they're gonna do. Australia, I think, has the whole government ID thing. So, but we all know that kids are smart. They, back in any day, they can make a fake ID. But the idea is, even governments are realizing that this is a problem.
Oh, that's interesting.
Sorry.
They're even, I think, banning the glasses in high school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's actually becoming a big.
Right.
The classes are horrible, like for all folks.
Yeah, so again, this is again to connect to the point in that it's not a failure on the parents' part. Now, this is not necessarily going to work for kids because they're always going to find backdoors into all of this stuff. But now, because we have legislation, it applies pressure on these companies to fix their products, right? So it's not that we're going to see all of the 16-year-olds and under off of these platforms. It's now grounds for the government to stand on to say, your product is not safe. You need to fix it. And now there's legal action against that. Okay?
I guess, and the reason we bring it up is that we've done a similar talk before in which parents disagree and say like, hey, no, it is important for my 15-year-old daughter to be on social media because she's the only one that's going to be left out and her friends are this and her friends are that. Like, oh, well, you gotta grow up and be a parent. You know what I mean? Your kid doesn't have to love you all the time, right?
So this also goes in line with the fact that there are rules around ages for driving. There's rules around ages for voting, right? So now there is a rule around age to be on social media, and it goes back to puberty. So at 16, this is when we see the brain is finally settling, the roots are taking ground, identity's taking form. So now we can introduce social media in a very controlled way. So what we're saying is that we're against social media and against technology. We're going to live in a hole, as hermits somewhere far away from this world. What we're doing is delaying it as much as possible. We're not saying to take them out of the world, but delay as much as possible so that they're grounded, they're formed, they know who they are, and then we can introduce this in a controlled environment. And there's a checklist if you guys are interested. There's a checklist online. So what kids have to be doing in order to get phones and social media and all of that, and what parents need to be doing, and the conversations that they need to have with their kids before they get all this device. Yes?
So like, for example, our situation, we just got a test drive, but we tested the one with the two screens, the one in the back and the one in the front. And our son always takes a nap in the car ride, but when we did a test drive with the screen in the back, he wouldn't sleep.
Yeah.
He was so obsessed with it. His attitude changed. He didn't want to go do his sport activity. That we literally made like a deal that we're not getting the screen in the back, we're just getting the front. And it actually does do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mechanics though, because we're constantly having to do different transition activities. I sometimes ask how my mom did it, but we're trying because I find that it's like 5 minutes of TV. This child is and I actually don't know why the TV is such a big impact.
But the TV, when we were kids, we watched TV, and maybe we didn't become as angry as our kids, because the TV is different. Like, the way that they make the shows, it's much more brain stimulating than it was when we were watching Tom and Jerry. You know what I mean? It's a different, these creators of these shows are making it intentional that it is more stimulating so your kid gets more addicted to it. Alright, so now that we're here, so there's something called the Hang 10 movement, okay? It's something in the States. It was, and what this Hang 10 movement is, that it talks about changes that we can make as a community, a church community, okay? Changes both, I think it was society, church community, and individuals, okay? So what we're going to talk about is this Hang 10 movement. And again, it's a Christian-based company, and they're like, what if the church led the way in the change? Okay? Because right now we're relying on the government to begin the change. And government's great, whatever government is, whatever is great, but they're probably really, really behind, and they're only going to make a movement if there's enough political pressure, if something happens. Like, we don't need to wait for them to do something, okay? We can do it as a church community, okay? So now that we give the data, we're going to go through what they say, and then we're going to go through maybe in our context what we can do. So that's the Hang 10 movement. Families, by extension, kids have to be better relationship with technology, but it's also important for them to have the real world interaction. So that's again from the anxious generation. So the Hang 10 movement is a set of 10 communal practices for Christian communities who wants to raise their children whose love for Jesus changes the way that they use technology. Okay? So this is what we're going to talk about. So there's 10 practices that they talk about, and again, they're broken up into 3 categories. The categories are communal, household, and personal. Communal, household, and personal.
So community is like the
Community
community
is
of the
like-
church. Like when we're talking about community, now we're talking about our church family. So it's not the community outside. It's like who's in here and what can we do as a group. So this is almost like, you know, what are the terms that we are agreeing on as a group and how we are raising our own kids, right? So this concept of community is really important because we always say to our kids, our family does certain things, but that family has different rules. Unfortunately, when it comes to phones, this doesn't apply. Because if you look at a group of kids, and there's 10 kids, and one of them has a phone, all 10 of them will be on their phone, right? So it takes only one person with a phone to engage everybody on the phone. So that's why the community aspect is really important. Because we're gonna say, all of us here are not going to have a phone until a certain age or whatever it is, right? So these are just community guidelines so that we're all taking care of each other's kids. You know how that we always say, like, it takes a village? This is our village, okay? Yeah.
We'll start off by talking about community practices. Okay? So the first thing that they had was wait until 9th grade for smartphones and slowly introduce social media. Okay? I will say we want our kids at some point in time to be introduced to social media when they're under my roof, right, our roof. Because if they are introduced to something for the first time when they have an extreme amount of freedom, they will become addicted to it in a different way, right? They have to learn how to be in the world and not be, you know, like basically, I'll give you an example. When I went to university, when I lived on campus, I had a friend who, his parents were very, very extreme about specific like social topics. Okay, he had never socially hadn't done anything. Okay, he was like homeschooled, didn't do anything. Right, and that kid became the biggest like alcoholic / clubber that there was. Right, because everything he got from 000 to just immense freedom, and he didn't know what to do with the freedom. Okay, so we have to slowly introduce things to our kids so that they are able to interact with it under our roof and able to have self-control. They have to gain self-control. Self-control skill that we develop. Okay? So in the Hang 10 movement, they said it is important to give your kids a smartphone, wait until grade 9, again, for their brains, like how their brain gets wired. And when you start introducing social media, you do it in like, again, like grade 11. And grade 12, and it's gradual. Maybe like TikTok or Snapchat are like, you know, pretty, a lot of like doom scrolling happens in that. So you want to introduce that maybe at the end. And at the beginning, you're on social media or whatever you want to call it, maybe on WhatsApp so they can talk to their friends. Something, okay? A graded approach.
So, this one. So no phones in schools or other teaching settings like church. Okay, so we know that phones and screens interfere with our concentration, with our engagements, you know, with all of that kind of stuff. So what they're saying is that in settings like church, like in the sanctuary, for instance, we don't have phone uses. Or, you know, as our kids are going to school, you're not going to take your phone with you, right? So that creates a sense of like sanctity, of like this is holy, this is not normal, like. We shouldn't be bringing this stuff into church, right?
I'll give you guys an example. When I was serving in Mississauga, when I was here, before we went on a trip, we would have like a little bucket, and all the kids would put their phone in. I don't know if you still do that or not, but that makes a big difference, right? I recently came back from a mission trip with some 18 to 25-year-olds. We went to Zambia. Okay, we said while we were in Zambia, the kids. They can't have their phone only for pictures. So there was no data allowed. Like I didn't allow them to buy a SIM card. And we did not give them the password for the Wi-Fi. Okay? So the only person that had a phone was me, the other adult who was with me on the trip, and the organizer, like youth. Okay? There was only 3 phones. Because the parents needed to contact us, they needed to call their parents. They said in those 2-week trip, the biggest difference in their relationship with God was the fact that they weren't constantly like inundated with information. Okay? So that trip, we saw God act so clearly. And it's not because the African God is more present than the Canadian God. It's the same God. But our kids were more wired to receive what God was saying. Okay? So having no phones in specific settings makes a difference. Again, I'm not saying that we all get rid of our phones, because again, we live in this world, in the real world. But we have to have like rules about when we shouldn't have phones. And this ban is happening in secular places. I don't know, I'm not a golf guy, whatever, but one of the biggest tournaments is called the Masters Tournament, okay? And in that Masters Tournament, they have a rule that no one is allowed phone on the golf, like when no spectator is allowed phone, okay? So look at these guys, they're looking at an amazing shot by one of the golfers whom I don't know, but they don't have their phones out, okay? How many pictures do we see of like the World Cup games or Raptors or whatever it is, have their phones and they're just taking pictures? You know, in reality, they missed the moment. They missed the moment by having their phone out. They're looking at it through the image of their phone rather than being there.
So I have a personal example of this. So we went to Egypt for the ordination, okay? And we did it, he was ordained in the cathedral, and the way that, where I was sitting, I could only see it through a screen. And I turned to like one of the organizers. I was like, I didn't fly all the way from Canada so that I could see it on a screen. I could just sit in my home on my couch watching the screen. So I'm not gonna be here and it's happening like, 5 feet away from me, but I'm watching it on the screen. A real life experience is not through a screen, right? So I positioned myself and I asked one of the priests to help me to actually get in front and to see it for myself, because a real life experience is so much more fulfilling and satisfying than seeing it on a screen, right? So this is what we want to also take in our liturgies as well, right? When we're seeing it through the screen, or when we're, numbing our brain through the screen, we're not engaged in the liturgy. The liturgy is designed so that our 5 senses are involved, right? So when we dull our senses and our experiences through the screen, we're missing something. It's not as deep as it can be. Okay?
The next rule is encourage important conversations face to face. Okay? So when you talk to your kids, we want them to, we're talking in high school, whatever, you want them to not have an important conversation with somebody through text. Okay? When you have a face-to-face conversation with somebody, it's a very different type of conversation. It's so hard to say something to your face as opposed to like text it to you, or break up with you, or whatever it is that you're gonna have a conversation about. And that becomes important later on. How many kids do you see, or like youth that you see, that don't look you in the eye when they talk to you, right? They're looking down. Why? Because the majority of their conversations that they had growing up were not face-to-face, were through texts. So for us, like we have a rule with our kids, like if we're going out to dinner, for example, I want you to look the waiter in the eye when you talk to him, when you're making an order, like things like that.
So I always encourage my kids, and like any stranger you speak to, I want you to come and tell me what the eye color is. Because if they see their eye color, that means they've talked to them, they had eye contact. Right? So I don't want them like ordering like this. I want them to be engaged. So that's, a very important thing. The other thing we talked about is, when we unfriend someone in the online world, there's an anonymity to that, right? There's no contention. You don't feel like the rush in your heart rate, and you get flushed and flustered and all of that. It's good to have those conversations as a young person, so that when you do have them as an adult, you're emotionally regulated, you're able to have these conversations in a calm manner, and you're able to hold that tension between your heart racing, but also be able to have a coherent conversation, right?
Even as couples, how many conversations do we have that are difficult conversations, right? If we weren't trained to have difficult conversations growing up, then me and Christina would have to communicate through text. Yeah, so, and I feel like when we communicate through text, sometimes the message is not clear. Yeah, so, all right. So rule number 4 is face-to-face conversation. Rule number 5. We adopt communal aspirations. So the hardest thing about technology is a collective action plan. The church has an incredible opportunity to be a community of action in a cultural moment of confusion. Okay? So, again, we need to do this as a community. For Christina's example that she gave, one kid on the phone affects all the kids in that grade. So those are the communal ones. Household practices. So my family tries to. So we have a rule, like the Abdleshaeeds do this. We don't care what, not we don't care, but this is our rule at home, and this is what we do, and this is our household practice. If a different household has a different practice, that's on them. Like it has nothing to do with us. Okay? So these are household practices. And I'll tell you, these are the ones that me and Christina again talked about this morning, said, you know, we're pretty hypocritical. And I'm happy that we're doing a talk like this, because every time we do a talk, we reset. And we like implement something different, and we try and like stick with it. So, here we are. Okay, so first of all, is we have no zones. Okay, so places in the house where technology is not allowed. The best, easiest one, honestly, is the dinner table. Right? The dinner table is such an amazing opportunity to have a conversation with your children. And if we have our phones, they will learn that that's okay. And even us, like, we really can't be fully present if we have our phones and we're reading it. So, no zones. The one is the dinner table for young kids. As you get older, a full no zone is like the kid's bedroom. Now I'm seeing all this and taking confessions, but a lot of the confessions with parents are about their children's like anger and inability to control themselves. A lot of it has to do with us talking where their kids allowed to have their cell phones, where their kids allowed to like what they're allowed to do with their social media phones.
What are the parents allowed to do with their cell phone?
What are the parents allowed to do?
And where are the parents' phones?
Yeah.
So a lot of these things now have become what the parents are doing. So now we're modeling behavior, right? So what we normalize at home, that's going to be the normal. That's going to be taken for granted by our kids. So if we're saying that the kids, their cell phones are not allowed on the dinner table, our cell phones are not allowed on the dinner table. If theirs are not in the bedroom, then ours are not in the bedroom. Because kids are not, I read this quote, kids are really bad at learning, but they're really good at copying. So they just do because that's what's normal.
I don't mean it as tit for tat like this. If the kids know, because the parents could be allowed things that the kids are not, and the kids need to understand that.
Absolutely.
There's age-appropriate, behavior. But I'm talking about the same things that you hear in confessions that are going on with the kids. They're actually going on much worse, actually, with the adults.
Absolutely.
Right? So there is an ultimate reason why this technology is not hurting our children. It's hurting the whole family. It's hurting the adults.
But what I want to say is that parents grow with their kids, right? So if our kids are like seeing, if we're bringing in technology onto the dinner table at such a young age, then that's going to be normalized for that kid at that age. But as they grow older, then sure, we can expand what we're allowed to do as parents, but having in mind that this is what the kids are seeing. So we have to almost like, practice self-control on ourselves and loosen the reins for ourselves as we loosen the reins for our kids. So this is a really good one. So screens in public places. So no screens in private places. Everything has to be communal. Everything has to be together. So our kids, yes, they don't have like phones and like laptops and stuff, but we watch a lot of sports. Okay, so our kids love sports. The NBA finals, the FIFA that's going on, but it's so fun, like gathering in the family room, we're watching, we're cheering on, we're having like banter back and forth. So it's not to say that the technology is bad and screens are bad. No, it's just how we use them, that's what we need to be aware of, okay?
And so what it's saying here, screens only in public places. Even your kid's doing his homework, he shouldn't be doing his homework in his bedroom, on Google, whatever. That computer can never enter his bedroom. When our kids do our homework, they're doing it in a public place. Whether it's the dinner table, we just converted, I don't know who needs a salon any of these days, no one. So we converted that room into like into a study room, it's communal. It's right beside the kitchen. I can just look in and see them. Yeah. So it's a communal place. And Joshi, who's the only one who has a laptop because he needs it for school, knows that that laptop only can stay on his desk. And so we see what he's doing. Yeah. So communal place.
Well, I mean, growing up, we were always told when you buy a gift for your kid, you have to buy a gift for the other kid. How do you guys do it with the smaller one not getting a screen?
So we give them, like, when you become this age, this is what I'll give you the example. I took Joshi to Zambia with me on this mission trip, okay? So the kids understand that who's 10. Okay? The other kids are like, when do we go on a mission trip with daddy? And we're like, when you are 10, you're gonna, the same way that Joshi got it at 10, in 2 years, Elijah, you're gonna go, right? So it's appropriate to tell them that you're not at this age, and therefore you're going to get it when you're at this age, and that's fair. It's like that's like saying, like, okay, Josh, I'm sorry you're turning 16 or whatever the driver's license thing is. I'm sorry, you have to wait till Elijah can drive for you to drive. No, there is an age appropriateness to something. And the other thing is, the older kid has to feel older. Like, it is important that he feels that there is a difference between me and my younger brother. It's not the same. Like, we make our kids sleep pretty early. But we have all our kids sleep in one room. They have like 12 beds, so 3 boys. As silly as it sounds, JJ's bedtime, who's 6, is 8 o'clock. Elijah's bedtime is 8:15, and Joshua's bedtime is 8:30. It's so silly. However, Joshua feels older, right? And he feels that, like, yeah, Elijah, you better go to bed. Like, you know what I mean? So there is an age appropriateness, and the older kid having something that the younger kid doesn't have.
But, so I'll say, like, so our guinea pig was Joshi, and I tell them that all the time. I'm like, you know, you're our first kid, so I'm a parent the first time with you. So I will make mistakes. It will appear better that Elijah, you know, has me after he's had you, and JJ, who's had 2 older, almost like we have figured out, kind of, except not really. But it's okay to have a conversation with the older kid to say, you are my oldest. It's the first time for me to be a parent with you. I will be making mistakes. And we will work together. It's the first time for you to be a 10-year-old. It's the first time for me to be a mom to a 10-year-old. With Elijah, it's gonna be my 2nd time. And with JJ, it's gonna be my 3rd time. So we're figuring it out together. We're working together to figure it out. Some things will be unfair for you because I didn't know any better. And some things you will have because you are the older kid. That's number 1. Sorry, yes.
I feel if I tell him that, he'll use it against me.
So, yes, like, you know, it's just to create that conversation of saying, like, I don't know what I'm doing, you also don't know what you're doing. So we're figuring it out together. That's number 1. Number 2, I will say that JJ gets more screen time because Joshi gets more screen time. So,
Screen time is in
like sports. So I'll say, for instance, Joshi was really into Paw Patrol at JJ's age, okay? Joshi's our oldest. Paw Patrol, loved Paw Patrol, would sing the anthem, and we had the costumes and the stuffies and, you know, all of that stuff at 6. Now my 6-year-old, when we ask him, what do you want for your gift? He's like, I want a LeBron James jersey. Josh had no idea who LeBron James was at 6 years old, but by, you know, birth order, JJ is now exposed to that. So it's okay that the youngest is exposed to what the oldest is bringing in, as long as there are certain things that he doesn't have access to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, that's actually, it's such a secure thing to do. I feel like that is wonderful to explain that to them as a model that you're taking ownership.
Yeah.
And like, you know, take ownership for your part of it.
Absolutely.
You have to do that.
Yeah, and I also, like, for us, we don't want to make them feel like we are perfect, and then when they realize that we're not perfect, it's such a, like, sudden fall, right? We want them to know that we are human, that, you know, everybody makes mistakes and it's okay, and as long as you're working on it, that's the goal. The progress is the goal. It's not perfection. We're not looking for perfect people and perfect kids and perfect parents. All we want to do is just model progression. Yeah?
And modeling apology. Right? It's important for you. I apologize to my kids if I get upset. Hey, Josh, I'm sorry. And I don't apologize with like I got upset, but you really shouldn't have done that. No, Daddy got upset and I shouldn't have gotten upset. Doesn't, like, yeah, sure, you did something wrong, we'll talk about it in a second. But my losing my temper is a dad's fault, okay? And that is really important for them to see and to model. And more important for us who are servants in the church, for them to see that, you're not like two-faced, right? Because then they're going to leave the church when they're older, like, oh, that's a hypocrite, so might as well, right? Yeah.
Sorry, it's not really directly to this point, but I wanted to ask about a previous point when you were saying your eldest had trouble with food, and you were saying maybe putting a screen. Do you feel like there's a critical year, or like from your research, that if they had a screen while they're eating, I can never fix that or undo that?
No, there's nothing in life that's unfixable.
But do you feel like, that's what my scare, because he's the only one, but he's like having trouble with food, and at the beginning, like we were trying to tempt him with stuff to get him to eat, and I'm trying to kind of transition that. But you feel like the ages 2 to 4 is really important to do that, or the 2 years?
So first of all, like this parental guilt is like a real thing. Much more than mom guilt and dad guilt, but parental guilt is a real thing. There is nothing that is not salvageable or savable or whatever it is, and we're just here to try and implement change as parents. So do we think, our kid's still a terrible eater, right? So even at 10, he's a terrible eater. If we didn't try this like Paw Patrol thing when he was 5, would he a better eater? I don't know, but whatever. This is what happened. I can't change the past, and I don't think it would have changed anything, to be fair. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious if you guys are navigating conversations around trust, because I remember being like a teen, and when my parents tried to sit down, there would always be like this, like, you don't trust me, like would be the automatic sort of interpretation of the situation. So maybe you guys will touch on that later, but I just want to.
We'll talk about it at the end when we talk about like contracts, so we can kind of get through this. Okay. Sorry.
Like for the Paw Patrol, like the shows from season 1 to like now season, I think 13, it changed drastically.
Yeah,
and I didn't
sure.
realize it, but like, I had to kind of stop this after season 9, I think, because now they're introducing like the girl dog and the other girl dog having a sort of a love relationship. And it's sad because it's like, my son is obsessed with Paw Patrol. And I feel like
Josh was
it became
every
like,
Halloween. Sorry, I'll say
I
so.
know, and now it became kind of like, he's upset with me when I don't want to put it on, but he wants to watch the new shows, and I'm trying to like, I don't know how to tell him, like, no, we can't watch that because there's LGBTQ, and I don't want to tell him that. What do I do?
So I first of all, like, it's okay for our kids to not like us, yeah? And it's okay to tell them that I'm making this rule because I'm your dad and I'm your mom, and I know that this is good for your. I don't say I know better, because I actually think that's not the right way to do it. But like, I believe that I'm raising you in a way that this is not good for your growth. So it's fine to just say no. You don't have to explain why to a 5-year-old or however old your child is. That this is just how we do it in our house. Maybe when it's older, like with Joshi, we explain a lot more as to like, no, we're not going to do this because of this and because of that and because of that. Now you can comprehend what we're talking about.
But I also want to emphasize the power of no and not now. So parents are really scared. We are all scared because we want to be friends with our kids, right? And we want to be like the cool parent, and all of these kinds of things. And I think behind that is that we want to have a relationship with our kids, right? We don't want them to be scared from us. We want them to come to us. But having a relationship with them doesn't mean that we don't have friction with them. We can have friction with them, but we can still have a relationship with them. I'll give you an example. So, we introduced fasting to our kids, and one of the things that we started off with was video games and screens. And one time, one of Joshy's friends came and told him, your parents are so harsh on you. So he came back and he said, you guys are so strict, you don't allow me to do, whatever it was on the fasting days and whatever. So I actually took him for a walk, and I explained to him, I'm like, Joshy, when you're older, you're not going to get what other people get at the same time. One of your friends will have a job that you want, that you won't get. You will want to go on a trip that you can't go on. So we're practicing this concept of no right now in your context, so that when you are an adult, you will be able to say no on your own. right? So this is like, in the context of fasting, is like, it's self-control. I can do this, but I shouldn't. And regardless of whatever it is. So before, we would just say, no, you're not allowed. Right now, we actually explain the reason behind doing it. So it's okay for parents to say no at a 5-year-old level, and at a 10-year-old level, you start explaining the reason behind your no. But saying no is not a bad thing. It's okay. You guys, it's actually encouraged to say no at a young age. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay, so next. So screens in public places, the rule number 6. Rule number 7 is we have homes for our phones. This is something that we need to do that we have not done. That there's like an area in the house where your phone go in when you enter. It becomes infinitely harder, to be honest, like, as a priest, as a Buddha would attest to. But the real truth is that, like, you know, in all of our situations, including priesthood, they functioned just fine before they had cell phones, right? So an hour of not looking at it isn't going to make a difference to most people's jobs. And you can have, if you're on call and you're a doctor, sure, you need to have it for that day that you're on call, whatever. And every job has a similar thing, on call for a job, whatever it is. But the overwhelming majority of times, we don't need to have our phone on our person, especially when, you know, we're doing something as a family. So have a home for our phones is like have a place in your home that you put your phone. Yeah.
It's all over. And so, before we go into the personal practices, I know it's a lot of information for you guys, and it's like 10 steps, and you know, we feel like this like energy of, I'm gonna go and implement, and you know, no screens for anybody, and all that kind of stuff. So what I encourage you guys to do is take 24 hours before you make any decisions, and decide on what are the practices that you're going to implement, okay? We're not looking at perfection, we're looking at progress, okay? So, the last group is own your settings, so your settings don't own you. So this is for the parents, right? So look at your settings. What are some apps that I don't need on my phone that are causing me interruptions? At some point in time, I had my phone on grayscale, and I deleted all the shopping apps and all the social media apps, so my phone became boring, right? So I didn't need to pick it up. So what are some things that you can do so that you own the phone, you are the owner, rather than it's just infiltrating every aspect of your life?
That's different for everyone, right?
Yes.
Christina could care less about the Sportsnet app. I love my Sportsnet app. I'm probably not up to date on sports, so it's different for everybody.
So I'll say that I have it so that I can create conversation with my kids, because my kids are like sport phenoms, right? So I have it, but it's very controlled in that I know the score, I know the stats, I know the players, I can engage with my kids, and then I'm out, right? So it'll look different for everybody. Next is wake up before your phone and go to bed after. So it's when you wake up, it's not the first thing that you grab. You wake up before your phone, you know, as Christians, spend quiet time with God. You say good morning to your family members before you get inundated with the emails and the, you know, oh my God, my day's gonna be so stressful and I have to go this and I have to go wherever it is. So take that time before you actually grab your phone and spend some time. And also at the end of the night, so that your phone is not the last thing that you take to bed. So a lot of the times we have like sleep disturbances and all of that stuff, and one of the main thing about like sleep hygiene is to create a window of half an hour to an hour before you go to sleep. So you put your phone 30 minutes to 60 minutes before you go to sleep away, and you know, you anchor yourself in like quiet time and you know, just kind of detoxing from your phone in order to have a better quality sleep. So that impacts your person, but also, you know, how you interact with family.
Yeah, like
There's so many people that have issues with their sleep, right? Have insomnia, right? If you go see any mental health specialist, you go see a sleep physician, they're going to talk to you about how your sleep maintenance, insomnia, right, is primarily in our generation related to a phone. And then the last one is hour off each day, or a time off each day. So I would encourage you all to have a time where you don't have a phone. Okay? Perfect time is your prayer time. And make sure your phone is not on your person. Because if it vibrates, it will change your stillness with God. So like we have like a prayer room, a place where we go pray. And if our phone is in that prayer room, my prayer is very different than my phone is not in my prayer. Okay? So, and that time, hour off could be different for everyone. Family dinner, working out, prayer time, whatever it is. Okay? So have a time where you don't have a phone. Okay? So So the last thing we'll talk about, because I know it's a lot of information, actually, yeah, not the last thing, one of the things, is what can parents do, okay? So we're gonna break it up by age brackets. So if you have a kid from this age to this age, these are things to think about. This age to this age, these are things to think about. And remember, the concept will be that we need to under-parent in the real world and over-parent like that. Currently we're under-parenting in the real world and over-parenting in the online. Sorry, switch. We want to over-parent in the online world, and we want to parent a little bit less in the real world. So this is kind of what we're going to talk about in each age bracket.
Okay, so the first age bracket is free play and including play with mixed ages. So church is a perfect environment for that. And that we're not going to, so I'll take the example of like Joshie, for instance. Elijah now plays with Joshie's friends and vice versa, so that everybody is mixed together. And it's good for the younger kids to see how older kids behave, because then they model the behavior of the older kids, right? So allow as much as possible free play among different ages. Interactions don't have to be optimized and perfect. So it's a lot of pressure, and it's almost like social expectation that parents account for every second of the day of the kids' lives, right? If we're going, from this place to this place, okay, like what are the snacks that I have to have, the water bottle, the, entertainment and all that kind of stuff. It's okay for our kids to not have anything prepared, right? So just boredom, creating this opportunity for boredom.
Is boredom?
Yeah.
Boredom is so important for their mind, right? They don't become creative, don't have like different type of thoughts if they're not bored. Yeah, problem solving. Let them be bored. Like, I'm bored. Oh, it sounds good. That's it. That's my answer to the kids. Oh, that's too bad. It sounds tricky, but whatever. It's too bad you're bored. They figure it out. They go play in a specific way. They go outside. They go play in the basement. Like, they do something. Okay? Let them be bored.
Yeah, so our kids have created this game. It's called basketball, baseball, soccer. But that would have never come about if they weren't bored. So it's essentially a ball with no rules, and they just go and play downstairs in the basement. But without that opportunity to be creative, they would have never done that. The other thing too is that now they are able to say, this was a foul, or I didn't like how you said that, or whatever it is, without us interfering, right? So they're able to have that like problem solving and critical thinking, and having that the conversation face to face without us interfering. So let the kids be kids. Obviously from 0 to 5, you're a little bit more hands-on, but almost like taking a step back and seeing what they're able to do, and obviously if they're not safe or in danger, then you step in. But just hanging back a little bit. And last thing is trust your children's desire to help out. So give them responsibilities and chores. So a lot of the times we want to be efficient, right? We want the dishes to be done so that we can go and do this and do that. But have some time in your schedule to integrate your kids into those things. So when we have our kids doing the dishes, it's brutal, and it creates more work for us. But the conversation that we always have is, it's not about the outcome, it's about the process. Our kids will never know how to do dishes unless they are involved in the process of doing dishes, right? So it's not about the outcome, but it's about the process.
Next is 0 to 5 about screens. So up to 18 months, they should only be on video calls with loved ones. Okay? And if you look at any pediatric guidelines, that's pretty clear. There's a good amount of evidence behind that. 18 to 24 months, minimal educational programming with a caregiver. 2 to 5 years, limit non-educational screen time to 1 hour per weekday and 3 hours in the weekend. Ages 6 to older, start healthy habits with screens and devices, and no screens in bedrooms. So we'll talk about the 6 to older. But yeah, in summary, up to 2 years, nothing. And then 2 to 5 is very, 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 very good.
Yeah. But I also want to say, these are how I want you to see this is the max. So if you can do less, that's ideal, right? This is like the upper limit.
And again, it's different when it's something communal.
Yeah.
Okay, like JJ, we have again, we're big basketball people, so like NBA opening night, we have a family party. Okay, and he's 5 and he's gonna sit down and watch the NBA game with all of us. And he's gonna destroy this 1 hour on a weekday thing immediately.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because that's a different type of screen time. That's not phone time. That's family having fun together.
so ages 6 to 13. So more experiences in the real world. So practice letting kids out of your sight without having a way to reach you. So walking to the park, going to the grocery store, even if you don't need anything, I just need like, I don't know, a pack of apples, whatever it is. I want you to go, I want you to pay the money, I want you to come back, and I want you to tell me how it was, right?
13 is not.
13 is, it's older, right? So it's creating that sense of identity and an independence, and to tell himself that I can do this. I can do things on my own where I don't need mom, I don't need dad, right? Walking to the park, riding that bike. So what we did last summer was we let Joshy ride the bike to the park, and we're hanging back and we're walking to the park at a slower pace, and we'll meet him there. It's not that we're like, letting him go for hours, but we're catching up to him. Encourage walking to school in a group. Free play after school, so not all days, again, have to be structured and organized, or rep and this and that. From our schedule, we have 2 nights a week where it's just nothing scheduled. You go figure it out. One night is a family night, and one night is, go do whatever it is that you want to do. Go play outside in the front yard. Whatever it is, just go find things to do. Go camping, which is really, really fun. Sleepaway camp with no devices. So again, this concept of being independent, of doing something alone without parents hovering, without contact from parents as well. So a lot of the times our youth are saying, oh, my mom is calling, my dad is texting, my dad is this, my dad is that, or my mom is this, my mom is that. So just allow that, cut the cord essentially, right?
And it's when they're older, we're gonna get on the Zambia trip. They're 18 to 25. I had so many parents call me and they're like, I want my kid to have a phone because I need to contact him. I'm like, maybe your kid's fine. If you want to talk to him, call me. You know what I mean? So it's a parental problem. It's a parental problem. The sleepaway camps with no devices, again, I don't know what the church policies are, but things to think about. Yeah.
The thing is, I agree, but then I disagree because I'm a bit scared because of everything like in the GTA with child trafficking and.
I'm with you, but I think what I said in the beginning is I think that stuff happened when we were young as well, but we just didn't know every news bit in the world. So we can't live our life out of fear. Right? Everything, we can't be fearful of everything. That's a very religiously grounded, there's a verse for it, right? We can't be so fearful about our kids, we can't be so fearful of everything. I completely agree with you. I'm also scared of something happening to my child. But on the flip side, I'm scared of my child being an adult who's unable to do anything, right? Who's dependent on mom and dad. So,
When I was reading the book, something that I found interesting that I hadn't previously thought about was the author was trying to say, historically, when we lived more in community, we could rely on other adults that were able to also watch our children. So hypothetically, if Joshua was riding the bike and he was further away from you, he fell, you could rely on other adults to assist him if you were nowhere to be found. But he was making the argument that when you live in this more individualistic society, we as adults are now skeptical of one another, and we don't reach in to help other children that are not ours. And I don't know what you think about that, but for me, I've been grappling with it because I don't know if I agree or not, and then I don't want that fear to necessarily stem us from giving our children or daughters free play or X, Y, and Z. But I don't know.
So I think a lot of it is on us, okay? So I'll give you an example. So I speak to the parents of the kids the parents at church who have kids that are similarly aged to my children, and I tell them, I want you to discipline my kids. I want you to be there. If you think my kid is doing something bad, I want you to go talk to him. I want you to be involved in his life. And that will give him the ability to do both, right? To help out my kid when he's in trouble, but to also, hey Josh, you can't be doing that, Raj, you can do it, JJ, you can be doing that. I think we also live very individual, isolated lives. And once we let other people into our lives, it will give them the freedom to have more of a community feel. But I think that has to be very intentional. It has to be you talking to the parents, because everyone's so scared of making you feel bad. Like I went to my Sunday school kids teacher and I'm like, hey, listen, I know my kids aren't, like I want you to tell me my kids are big. I'm not going to be that parent that say, no, I'm a Buddha and there's no way my kid did that, no chance, right? I want every parent to be able to feel that they can also be part of my kids' community. So, yeah.
I think this is also a very fine line. I mean, just like you said, it's on us first. I
Yeah.
feel a lot of time like, oh, why is that mom talking to my son? What is she telling him? What's her point of view? Is she telling him stuff that I may not agree with? Why is that dad is, what did he tell him about the slide? Okay, I want to go, I want to listen. I want to quickly, oh, why?
You want to intervene at all times.
Yeah, like you're resting his hair. Why are you touching him? Like, I don't know. It's because because given the nature of my job, we see so many things that are just disgusting. I'm sorry. So it's so hard to let that go.
You're right, and not everyone just because you're at church doesn't mean you're a good person by any stretch of the imagination, right? So we're very clear. But still, the beauty of that adult having a conversation with your child is that also opens up an opportunity for you to have a conversation later about what that adult said and how your child should view the world, right? If that adult never had a conversation with your kid, then you can never have a subsequent conversation and both of you can grow. You know what I mean?
You know, it's actually a good point. I'm gonna bring it into something. So our son loves taking the bus.
Okay.
And
How old's your kid? I'm so sorry.
he's 4.
Okay.
And I was very against it because he's very young, he's gonna be with the grades until grade 6. Anyways, all the bad words, all the talking back, and all the bullying that he brought to his little sister was from the school bus.
I agree. Well, we're
And,
not sent to school. Like, again, we have to be wise in how we introduce the community to your
And
kid.
it's very difficult because
Yeah.
he goes to a very good school, we love the school, but the bus was always an issue.
Yeah.
So we said, you know what, we're gonna do part-time bus. Twice a week, you're gonna go take the bus, and then all that. But I'm not even kidding you. Every time he takes that bus, there's a behavior or there's something that I don't know what to do because the older kid does this, but yet the older kid is the one who's the monitor, so he's the good example because he'll be so good to us, bring us our son, but then we find out that
So there has to be wisdom in how we introduce community. So we have a rule that our kids don't take the bus, like we made. But and thank God we're able to drive them to school. Our kids want to take the bus because they're friends, but the bus is like full of badness. I completely agree with you. So no, it's again like that's not what I'm trying to say. But I do agree with you that the bus is completely lacking in any type of control. So and the grade 8s have their phones. Your 5-year-old can watch anything that the grade 8 is watching because that phone rule doesn't apply until they get to school, right? So we have to be wise in what we allow them to do.
And the funny part is we actually brought it to the attention of the principal, and the first thing the principal said, as soon as they leave the school on the bus, it's no longer
Yeah, it's not his problem.
And I was like, great, so the principal can't even really get
No,
involved.
the bus, like, if you're able to drive your kids to school, a lot of not so great things happen on the bus. But that being said, yeah, no, it's okay.
It's okay.
And it's not a big deal. So that being said, it is also important as parents to think about what's the next step that your kid is going to, like the next thing that your kid's going to encounter, so you could be the first voice in their ear. So like, Christina is amazing at this. When our kids go from like SK to grade 1, she has this like mommy-kid date in which she tells them the bad words. Okay? It's like, you're gonna hear this word and she says it. And you're gonna hear this word and she says it. Says it. Why? Grade 1, you're gonna start hearing stuff. And if the first voice is your mom or your dad, it's important. Like the main reason I took Joshie on this trip to Zambia was this was my time to talk to him about alcoholism. And he's only 10, but like that's what we see in Zambia. We went to bar preaching, right? We went to homes and it's six kids from different dads and one mom. So we had to talk about those things. Good. I'm the first voice in Josh's ear about those social topics. So it's important for us to think ahead of what our kid's going to encounter, and so it's fine. Tell our kids what the swear words are. Okay? Tell them it's bad. It's okay.
So we're going to zoom through this because we only have a few minutes. So ages 6 to 13, in terms of screens, no more than 2 hours a day for screen-based recreational activities. Devices in common places, learn how to use parental controls. So this is for us parents. Learn parental controls. The modem is the best line of defense, right? So get your tech hat on, incredible. And then no social media until 16 years of age. So again, we talked about puberty. So what can parents do? Experience in the real world, increase mobility, so take the bus, the subway, like do all that kind of stuff. Let them hang out in third places, so not school or home. So church is a great example. Take them to youth group, have fun day Fridays at church, spiritual days, all these kinds of things. Let them hang out outside of you and control and cut the cord. Rely more on your teen at home, so get them engaged in chores, have responsibilities and expectations. Give them an opportunity to live up to who they can become, right? So I always tell my kids, I'm like, I see your future, you're better than this, right? Live up to it, Encourage work part-time, encourage them to lead. So whether you have camp, get them my first job was a swimming instructor, have those goals, what are you gonna be doing? What's your next step? Bigger thrills in nature, so backpacking, hiking, canoeing. Nature is healing in so many ways, and if you add this concept of nature, you can connect with God in a completely different aspect, okay? So less experience on screen, loosening restrictions as teens mature. So this is when you're introducing social media, but then now you're going to do it in a limited way or a limited time, or not all social media platforms, so you can prioritize that. More autonomy and self-determination, allow them to make mistakes and not come down your throat, right? Transition from basic to smartphone, continue to set family rules, encourage good routine, and start opening social media, but always look for addictive and problematic behavior. So it's not like, now you have social media, okay, go figure it out. No, I'm still on top of you, right? So, very, very, very briefly, introduction of devices, grades 7 and 8. What's in that book is it's recommending to a smartphone. So it's not that you have, a smartwatch. You don't have access to the whole world and you can't have social media on there, but you still have a way to contact. So this introduces independence, but you're still able to contact them. So when they're on the bus, they can call mom and say, okay, I'm gonna be late 5 minutes because the bus is late, or whatever it is. Early high school, so 9 to 10, monitored phone. So something that's completely shut down. One phone that's out there on the market is called the Pinwheel, where you have complete control over what apps and how much time you're using, and it's almost like you're mirroring the screen of the phone onto your phone. So you have access, and this is where a contract comes in, right? Because I'm giving you this, this is a responsibility, but you have to sign on the dotted line, right? So what are the expectations? And then in late high school, 11 and 12, gradually unlocking of smartphone and additional social media accounts. A lot of the time, parents just say, well, I'm just going to give them a flip phone. Well, you actually can't control what's happening on the flip phone. It still has access to a browser. So this is not the best way to introduce phones. They can have a flip phone later on, but, Lastly is that giving kids lockdown smartphones is not the best way, because as we said before, kids always have a workaround. They're geniuses. 2 things. This is a family checklist. I forgot to print it out, but I usually do. So it's almost like a list of expectations for what the kids can handle and before we consider giving a smartphone, but also conversations that you have before you give your kids a smartphone. One of them is, am I talking to them about sex, pornography, online trafficking, sex trafficking, nudes, all of those different things, so that you are the first voice in their ear, and you also open the lines of communication to make it comfortable for the kids to come and tell you, oh, I've seen a bad picture, what's porn, all of these different things, so that you invite your kid to share in these conversations rather than them hearing it outside, and then they're going to start thinking, well, mom and dad don't know about this, I can't talk to them about this, right? Lastly is like a family phone plan, so it's like a contract for parents and kids. One of the main things for kids to know is that the phone is mom's and dad's. This is not yours, right? This is mine. I have a right to it. I have a password to all accounts. I can check it at any time, all that kind of stuff. And last slide, we made it on time, is these are like the different resources that were used to create. One thing that I want to point out is this Childhood 2.0. So this is a documentary about different generations and what their childhood looks like, what their childhood looked like. So you had the baby boomers, you have the millennials, and now you have the Gen Alphas, and the progression of childhood and how childhood is transforming, and what we can do as parents so that we can give them a childhood, that is not a phone-based childhood. Yes.
You send these resources to, yeah, I guess, who knows, what's the, you send everything.
Yeah, we'll share.
Even the other page, though.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. We'll send it out. Yes.
We can just send you the presentation.
Yeah.
Send you the presentation, you guys can go through it.
Please give Abuna and Christina a big hand. This was very helpful, very informative, and I think going through the slides ourselves second time would be helpful. There was a lot of things that I took note of, and I'm sure you probably did similarly, even mental notes. It would be good, I know Christina said to take about 24 hours to make a decision. And I think that's very wise, because right now you can go home and just remove everything and then surprise your partner who's not here or your kids who are not here. But I think it'd be wise to sit back and take this. But it might be a good idea if you can jot down 1 or 2 or 3 points that you want to focus on later within the next 24 hours. I find that personally very helpful, because as you're processing through this, you think, okay, you know what, yeah, I just really crossed the line over here. Or maybe I don't want to cross the line with my family or my kids over there. So it might be a good thing to write it down now so that you can remember to think through that specifically as you go through the presentation. Thank you again, thank you, Christina, for this. And I'm sure some of you would like to ask some questions, so we'll close with prayer so that we finish our meeting on time, which is 12:30. And then if you have some questions, you and Abuna and Christina are open to hanging around for a few more minutes. You can, by all means, come forward and ask those questions.
Kids are treated and good though.
Yeah, so they work the most time they can spend here, the better for them. That's it. Yes. Also, today marks our Megat. Do you want to speak about the calendar? So this is our last one for the summer, and then September 19, 18, 19, and 20. If you want to mark this down, most likely it will be 19 and 20. I'm not sure yet, because sometimes we run into, well, we booked that weekend, 18, 19, and 20, to have a conference or a retreat or some sort of a mini convention for focus. And so just put it in your calendar so you don't get busy, and you block it out for you and your family through the ministry, the Focus Ministry. It's going to be 18, 19, 20 of September, maybe 19, 20. It depends on what we find, and we want something to be affordable and good, and yet at the same time gather us together and have some fun when still the weather is nice, when still we're not into the winter season as much. So please pray for the family ministry at the church and in the area and in the world, because as you know, family ministry is very important. Family is the crucible in which the next generation is born. And as Abuna and Christina were talking, it's not just, I do agree that the parents have a big role, and that's probably what we have control over, right? But isn't it amazing when society joins, when the system at large comes alongside the parents and the families and gives them a bit of a padding and support? That's very important. And so in the community, we can start with the community. We have things to do within our families and the things we do personally. So again, thank you, and thank you very much for this presentation. Thanks.